good morning, everybody. Thanks for having me. I'm raising more questions than anything for my presentation this morning to feed into the discussion that we'll have after the break. We've been working on this topic for some time at the Organic Research Centre with the ORC Wakelings population, also known as YQ. We started marketing that in the beginning of the temporary experiment that ran from 2014 to 2021. And we encountered various challenges, not to do with variety registration or population notification, but instead around the controls on seed production. And what I'm interested in unpicking here is whether the regulation are leading to those challenges, or instead it's actually more of the structural issues around how we organize ourselves in a production when we are working as quite small operators, dispersed, decentralized approaches to seed production, which often go hand in hand with heterogeneous material. So this diagram I've kind of used a few times now, and you may have seen it before, but it is an overview of everything that has to happen to certify a seed lot in the UK. Each of these scrolls represents a different form that has to be filled in by us as the operators. I understand this varies from country to country, but it highlights some of the challenges that we can face when we're registering, certifying heterogeneous seeds. And these are challenges that we faced as the Organic Research Centre working within the first temporary experiment. And I think that was partly to do with our inexperience and the fact that we were working with small volumes as much as it was any challenges with the fact that we were working with a genetically diverse crop. But within the UK, we are now looking at how we can adapt these processes through a new temporary experiment. So one of the main issues is around maintaining seed quality and health. And obviously we would all have that as an ambition within our seed production. So we want to make sure that we have sufficient processes in place without them becoming overly burdensome. The other thing is around the kind of excessive rules on things like seed labeling and kind of how we can manage that and come up with a compromise that still delivers the ambitions of this process without it being such an administrative burden, and also the associated costs with that. One of the things is that if you're working with farmer breeders or farmer seed producers and in a dispersed way, then we would not maybe have these formal relationships with seed companies, and getting relationships developed with seed companies in the UK was a challenge that we faced when we were working with small quantities. So we are thinking about how we can work with mobile seed cleaners and things like that. But we are also observing that these are kind of consolidating and being snapped up by bigger companies. And once again, they wouldn't be interested in working with the smaller quantities that heterogeneous material is currently available. So it presents somewhat of a bottleneck for upscaling. So in LiveSeed, when we were working together, the partners all working on the temporary experiment, we were really focusing on the identity and how identity presents a challenge in both variety registration and seed certification, and the fact that seed identity and variety identity were coupled. And obviously we cannot always use the seed identity and the crop identity to then validate that a variety is what it is. And the conclusion from that during the LiveSeed project was that we were really dependent on the traceability process. So these forms and administration are really important, but it's understanding how we can make the most of them and make them sensible for heterogeneous material. And now I think how we can adapt this traceability process to also guarantee the seed quality and health. So looking at other experiences now within the OHM regulation across Europe, not or many countries have registered OHM yet, but we have examples in Germany, Denmark, France, I think the Czech Republic as well, but Carl will also be able to provide further information on this. Germany have registered the most, different types of OHM from different breeders. And in terms of seeds marketing, they are actually still in the process of developing the protocols, and there's some temporary fixes in place which vary from federal state to federal state. And they are looking at whether there can be adapted field inspections. So as the diagram that I presented highlighted, field inspections can be a challenge, particularly around the varietal identity, but we do still see their value in terms of looking at weed and disease burden. What we found in Germany is that the adapted field inspections are actually resulting in higher costs when it comes to certification. So in Germany, they are looking actually how they can integrate the OHM within the existing system rather than it becoming a more expensive process. On the other hand, in Denmark, we have maybe what you would describe as an under the radar approach, where it is more of a soft touch in terms of the field inspections and certification process. Not soft touch. So there's an agreement between mainly Andersborgen and the Landsorten organization and the national authorities as to the approach. But the question remains whether, once there were larger volumes of seed being traded, whether this would continue. And Anders is here, so it would be great if in the questions he may add some further perspectives on this. So as we can see, there are different approaches and maybe a lack of consistency. Finally, in Austria, we have Bernd Katchner has shared some slides there here too in the audience about their experience with a mountain rye population that they've developed. And it's been grown on organic farms at high altitude. And it's been in production for some time now, since the late 80s, and is adapted to low input conditions and frost tolerance. So it's a really valuable population for that region, but they have been finding that they face some challenges when it comes to seed marketing and controls of quality and around health. As I say, notification has generally gone smoothly, and that's the case in Austria. But the challenges when it came to seed production were not just technically challenging in terms of meeting the criteria for the seed certification process, but there were issues around quality and purity, and that was maybe something that needs to be reviewed. For example, when new novel populations are being developed, there may be challenges in terms of germination or the criteria being too restrictive, and that needs to be discussed with the national authorities as to whether there can be flexibility. Something they also found was difficulties in turnaround between harvest and sowing and the need to get the seed tests done. So this kind of speaks again to the administrative side. And if you're working as a small operator, the challenges that you may face in terms of getting your crop processed as a priority, but also there may be challenges in terms of different timelines that people operate on, the different crops that are being produced. They also have found the laboratory testing to be expensive. So really, as I say, this is opening up discussion for us to kind of share our experiences and think about where the challenges lie, but also what we think would be a better process or would make it easier for greater volumes of heterogeneous material to be adopted by practitioners. So what are the useful points within the seed certification process? How can we make sure that we are guaranteeing seed health and quality, but what is adding administrative burden and expense and is really over the top? For example, maybe like specifying colours of labels and things like that can be quite a challenge for people that have not got existing relationships with seed companies or that are wanting to follow a decentralized, dispersed approach. Has traceability definitely been accepted as the process to guarantee seed identity? We found in the UK that there's still some discussions around whether some more protocols will be developed around variety identity, wanting to guarantee heterogeneity, wanting to maintain certain traits over time in evolutionary populations, and this could be a challenge which we still haven't got to the bottom of. And on the flip side of that, how can we ensure that things are what they say they are? We've also got the threat of new GMOs. How can we guarantee that they are not being put into circulation? So what needs to change in our processes to allow for increased genetic diversity? And are the problems that we're facing to do with the regulation and the technical sides of how we interpret that? Are there structural issues, for example, access to lab testing, access to seed cleaning, access to the appropriate infrastructure and skills to ensure that we can operate as we need to. And there's a question around cost for smaller operators and whether the same costs should be applied. So there's often a discussion of a level playing field, but how is that determined in relation to the different size of operators and the different barriers that they face? So in the preparation for these workshops, OMKI did some analysis and questions around the challenges that are facing around seed quality, and these relate to both health and disease issues, but also maintenance. So this is particularly challenging when we're working with heterogeneous material. And these were the order of priority that were determined. So the number one challenge is around seed purity, and then health came in second. And there's a range of issues around maintenance in terms of maintaining population sizes, isolation and heterogeneity. Then there's the questions around seed size and maintaining diversity. So we'll be unpicking these in the discussion after the break, and we'll be thinking about how that we can relate these different factors to the current seed certification processes, the ambition of those, what they are doing to address those challenges, and then maybe if we feel that they are not addressing those challenges in the best way possible, what we want an alternative approach to look like, or it could look like, and then any examples that we've got. So yes, I'll leave it there. Thank you very much, and look forward to the discussion.